Good evening. This is Attorney Talib Kareem, CEO of Abe Legal, and I am delighted to have a dual streaming opportunity to interview a really wonderful guest, someone who's an expert in many areas, particularly condo law. And we're very happy to have her. And we're joined by Nani Austin. How are you doing, Nani or Nani? Thank you for joining us. And also Drew. Hey, Drew. Welcome to the Abe Podcast with attorney and state representative delegate to the Maryland House of Delegates, Nicole Williams. Let's bring her on. Nicole, how are you doing?
Good. How are you today?
Well, very, very good. This is an amazing opportunity to be with you. I know that the General Assembly has just convened. I guess, do they ring in or do they gavel in the session?
We gavelled in at noon on yesterday.
Excellent. So noon on yesterday, the Maryland General Assembly convened, and you were there representing which district do you represent again?
District 22.
District 22, including my former hometown of Hyattsville. So shout out to all my Hyattsville family over there. I'm really glad that we have the representation in you there, because we need that, and the community needs that. And this is a conversation that we're going to talk a little bit about your work, both with the Maryland General Assembly, as well as your work with your law practice, and how we are helping to promote that practice through Abe Legal. So if anybody has any questions, save those questions, because we're going to get to them. Don't hesitate to put them into the comment section, and we'll put you live on the air. And we're again broadcasting both on YouTube as well as Instagram. So if some of our Instagram friends want to go over to the YouTube, you can go and check us out on Abe Legal's YouTube brand, and we will definitely give you a shout out there. And we see we have Sukram 1911. I guess that might be from our Kappa Alpha Psi community there, perhaps. I don't know. Yo, if so. But anyway, Nicole, how are you doing? And where exactly are you based right now?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I am, I live in Greenbelt, but my law office is actually in Bethesda. And so with this virtual world that we're living in, because while everyone's working from home, the General Assembly, we're kind of working from home a little bit on a hybrid schedule ourselves. And so I was in Annapolis earlier today. As I mentioned, we got gavelled in on noon yesterday. And so with the House of Delegates, we are having what we call pro forma floor sessions right now, where really the members are not required to be present. And so in terms of the floor sessions, it's just the Speaker of the House, Speaker Pro Tem, the Majority Leader and Minority Leader, just kind of pushing through kind of rudimentary and kind of administrative type of bills and assigning them to various committees at this moment. Had our first committee hearings today, and we will have more committee hearings next week that will all take place virtually. You can view all of our committee hearings live via YouTube from the Maryland General Assembly website. And so we will be conducting all of our committee hearings and voting sessions, at least on the House side, virtually right now for the foreseeable future. And then we will go back in person later in February to take up the business of the people in terms of any floor votes that we have to do at that time in person. So, in terms of where we're based out of, in this day and age, that could be anywhere. So
Absolutely. Well, I certainly wanted to first of all start by sending a prayer out to the Almighty for His protection. In Arabic, there's a word called shifa, which means well-being. Just recently, a member of my own family, definitely let her know that we're praying for her to recover, got COVID. And Even my nephew got COVID, and this disease seems to really be, particularly with the Omicron variant, sweeping even more so than the last iterations. And I know that the Maryland General Assembly is going to be taking some action to try to, address it. What specifically do you guys have on the table, and what are you focused on in that respect?
Yeah, I know that there were some hearings and briefings today with our state health department before, I think, the Senate Health, Education, and Environment Committee, as well as our Health and Government Operations Committee earlier today, kind of talking about what is going on in terms of a state level and trying to deal with the surge that we're seeing right now in COVID cases and the effects that it's really having on our medical system here in the state of Maryland. Most of our hospitals here in the state are in what we call a CSC mode, a crisis services care is what they call it, what they're providing at this point, which means, they're not performing elective type of surgeries or procedures at this moment, just to try to maintain bed capacity for individuals who are coming into the hospitals because they are COVID, because of their complications that they're having due to COVID. The majority of the individuals that we're seeing are unvaccinated, though there are some breakthrough cases that we're seeing in our hospitals, but the majority of the cases that we're seeing are amongst individuals who are unvaccinated. Not to say that, vaccinated people are unfortunately contracting COVID as well, but seem to be able to weather the storm much better because they are vaccinated. So we're monitoring the situation and working with the state and trying to deal with those issues. And so I think you're going to see some additional kind of, from a legislative standpoint, some policy measures. I know there's been some conversation about some tax relief, additional tax relief this year. I know that the governor is proposing. I'm not certain how, I haven't seen the details, so the devil is always in the details as it relates to those things. But in addition to that, you'll probably see the legislation around housing. There was a big housing package that was on the table last session to try to address the uptick that we saw because of the pandemic as related to foreclosures and evictions and things like that. Those measures did not pass, but I do know that we will see some of that legislation coming back again this session, because while a number of industries have rebounded some last year, we are still seeing, severe gaps and issues within our business sector. Right now, a number of companies are whether employees are sick and not coming to work, so they're short staffed, and people are still not working because, really because of the pandemic. And so you're going to see a number of housing bills coming back that were probably introduced last session. We're also going to be taking up a number of other measures outside of COVID, most notably dealing with cannabis and the legalization of cannabis and a possible referendum on the ballot as it relates to that here in Maryland. This upcoming November is one of the big issues that we're tackling this upcoming legislative session. I serve on the Judiciary Committee in Annapolis, and so one of the other big ticket items that we're dealing with is addressing the issues around ghost guns and the proliferation that we see with ghost guns in our streets in the black market here in the state of Maryland.
Can I ask you a question on that issue of guns, and maybe it definitely ties to the issues of marijuana, as you mentioned. It seems to me that, and I don't know if there's been any data generated on this, but since the legalization of marijuana, there seems to have been an increase in violence. And, I don't know if these things are connected, but it is true. It is definitely a truism. And I don't know exactly how these things are connected, but I do know that the governor just proposed, this refund the police, which, is in his estimation, a way of trying to go after crime. But, we had a wonderful conversation with mental health providers. And what they brought out was that there was a kind of a confluence of things that were going and contributing to this uptick of violence. One was the possibility of people could get COVID, and so that creates new stressors. Then it's the economic situation that was already there, but definitely been made worse, especially when there are very real concerns that some people are expressing about taking the vaccination, and as a result they're being terminated from their jobs. So then again you have that happening, and so then in combination you have just again the possibility that people are smoking marijuana, and in some cases, especially if they're not getting from them from dispensaries, this marijuana could be laced with all kinds of chemicals that could be causing these types of violent reactions, which are leading to not just an uptick, but a surge in violence in our communities, both in Prince George's County, which you represent, as well as throughout the state. So with that in mind, I mean, and it relates to your practice. You're a condo lawyer, and so I want to tie it back to the area of practice that you focus on when you're not in the Maryland House of Delegates. I mean, what can we do? And what was recommended is, by this group, one of the things is that we increase our funding for mental health services to combat some of these real issues that are happening, as opposed to increasing police. I mean, I know that last year there was some really intelligent conversations about whether or not the whole construct of police departments needed to be totally revamped, since they were so oftentimes the culprits behind a lot of senseless violence that was going on in our communities. The jails themselves are in many cases abysmal shape, both the way in which the prisoners are kept and the conditions, as well as what is happening in terms of the lack of training and opportunities while they're there to be able to allow them to come back out and get good jobs. What are your thoughts as a member of our House of Delegates focusing on this in the Judiciary Committee, and also understanding how these things have an impact on property values as a real estate and condo lawyer?
All right. Yes. So there's a lot to unpack there. So yeah, I mean, the rise in crime that we've seen over the last year is something that's been going on across the country, to be quite honest with you. And I mean, Maryland, we don't have legal, recreational use is not legal here in Maryland. The only type of use that is legal here in Maryland is medicinal use. And so that's something where you would have to apply to get a medical marijuana card and things like that. So I don't know if we can say that the use of marijuana is related to the uptick. I think it's probably more related to the pandemic. And like you mentioned, just kind of the stressors that people are under. I think the loss of job opportunities for individuals because of the pandemic, with the businesses shutting down and things like that. I think it's sort of what's contributing to the rise in crime that we're seeing really all across our country. And so, yes, we passed sweeping police reform legislation here in Maryland the last legislative session to try to deal with what we were seeing across the country in terms of abuse by the police, in terms of their police powers, excessive use of force, those types of measures. Part of that conversation did include mental health, and we put in that bill additional measures and funding for mental health for our police officers, but not really also addressing the mental health of our community as a whole. And I think that's something more that we need to do, because studies have shown that, someone who is involved in criminal activity, typically is a combination of a lot of different factors that are going on within their life. It's not just simply they just wake up one day and say, you know what, I think I'm just going to rob a store today.
Right.
That's really not how that happens.
Right.
And I think a lot of the measures that the governor is proposing,
I can't hear you. Can you, Nicole? Nicole, I think we're having some Nicole. Nicole. We're having a mute issue. Nicole, can you go back on? Take your mute off of the laptop. Nicole, can you go take your hey, you're back. Okay. Our Instagram feed dropped, but our YouTube feed is continuing. So can you pick up there?
We figure this out. Okay.
Yes, we're back. We're back. Our YouTube feed.
Okay, I think I lost my host here.
Okay. Hey, are you back? Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah.
Great. We're back. I'm glad that we're back. We were having some technical difficulty there. So you were going over what you guys are doing in terms of the police reform issues and how that relates to property values.
Yes. Let's talk about police reform and property values. And so studies have shown that mandatory minimums basically just don't work. They don't deter crime. Really, the only thing that they totally accomplish, and we've seen this over the years, is they lock up a disproportionate number of Black and brown individuals. Is really the end result of what we've seen with mandatory minimums. And so we want to be very serious about deterring crime. Then we need to start investing our dollars in what we know works. There's a program that has been that's in Baltimore City, really just dealing with basic intervention of young people who we see are starting to go down a road that may lead them to become susceptible to criminal activity. And we've seen programs like this in Baltimore City and programs like this in Chicago, and we've seen that they have worked.
On that note, we worked with the Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office, Aisha Braveboy, who I know you know very well, former legislator herself, on a program that would pair young people who are involved in criminal related issues, young people as well as parents, and they would. It would also give them the incentive to stay out of harm's way, stay out of some of the things that got them involved with the infraction that they're facing, by giving them cyber job training. So, and as you might know, some of these cyber jobs are such that you can get 2, 3 months, 4 months worth of training and start a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 job, and then after a year or two start making $90,000 and $100,000.
Right.
And as you mentioned, pointed out, oftentimes the main stressor that is contributing to a lot of this crime is economic, and people's inability just to basically survive. What is that something that the Maryland House of Delegates can take up? I think that the state's attorney, has a great program. I mean, and of course we were working with her on it, but I mean, what do you think about something like that?
Yeah, no, I think that program is a great program and a great example of some of the things that we can do to really deter crime within our communities. The problem is that, our society wants immediate results, and a program like that takes time. It takes time to, yes, you have to spend a little bit of time and a little bit of money to invest in people. But the studies show that if you take the time and the money to invest in them, then overall, it's less money that we as a society would have to spend incarcerating them. Right. And that's the difference. And so I know last session, we passed a bill, and it doesn't seem like a big deal on its face. But it was a bill to really address racism as a public health epidemic. And it was a bill that was sponsored by Delegate Jocelyn Pena Melnick and it was called the Shirley Nathan Pulliam Health Bill, and it's based on a lot of work that former State Senator Shirley Nathan Pulliam had done over the years. And how the reason that's significant is because now it can start to put in place the ability for our health department to start to view certain things from a public health standpoint, to start to view gun violence from a public health standpoint, to start to view structural racism from a public health standpoint. And I think when we kind of start to do that, not think of gun violence from a criminal standpoint, but really this is a mental health issue. This is something where people are engaging in these types of behaviors because they feel, for whatever reason, that they had, like you said, have no other alternatives and no other means of being able to survive in our society. And so that was a step in the right direction, and it's something that we're going to continue to do. Let
me ask you a question. So if people have ideas like the one that the state attorney's office and us are working on, what is the process of getting that type of recommendation to you, and what's the time frame for working with you to get some action on something like that?
Yeah, so while we are a part-time legislature, we really are working year-round on behalf of the people of the state of Maryland. And really, the time to kind of approach either myself or one of my other colleagues with something like this, with a bill idea that you might have, I would say it's probably around the summertime. Because then that gives us time to start to kind of frame the language, think about how we really want the language to take place. Who else do we want to bring to the table in terms of other advocates and allies and things like that? When we gavel into session, at that point, there have been bills that have already been filed, what we call pre-file bills. I think we've already had 200 pre-file bills by the time we gavelled in yesterday.
Wow.
And so, our deadline, I'm already have some bills that I'm going to be dropping in the next day or two that have already been drafted, worked on. I have coalitions already set up for my legislation. I mean, I'm done with bills this year. And bill drafting, they have told us if you don't have your language to us by next Tuesday, you're out of luck. So waiting until the session starts is too late. Really reaching out, working on it during the interim is what myself and most of my colleagues do, because it is a process, and we want to make sure that when the bill is held in committee, it's not the first time that it's been kind of talked about, hashed out, and fleshed out. And so that's my advice to anyone who wants to get more intimately involved with the work that we're doing in Annapolis in terms of trying to get legislation passed. So
let me ask you, in terms of the work that you do as a condo lawyer and and as a real estate lawyer, and I know that our time today is kind of elapsed, so we can maybe put at least 10 minutes on the clock if you wouldn't mind.
That's fine.
Let me ask you, what are some of the most important topics that you find that you're confronting as a condo lawyer right now?
Yeah, I mean, most of my clients are concerned about the same thing that pretty much most folks are concerned about. We were talking about crime earlier today, just ensuring that crime is kept to a minimum within their community. Also, because we talked about maintaining property values, you mentioned that earlier, and that is something that's super important. I mean, that's really kind of the role of the condo association or homeowners association, is to maintain the aesthetics, partially is to maintain the aesthetics, to maintain the property values of everyone within the community. And so part of it's landscaping, snow removal, trash pickup, but it's also dealing with crime. It's also dealing with fostering a sense of community. Most people want to live in a place where they feel like they can get along with their neighbors, and that, everyone has each other's back. And so you'll see condo associations have social events to try to do that, to try to foster that sense of community, and newsletters or holiday parties or whatever the case might be. And so, and
if you find that your condo association isn't doing that type of thing, if they're not being responsive, what are the steps that you as a lawyer could help someone to take in order to fix that problem?
Yeah. And I guess, my first question is, well, why is this stuff not taking place? Is it because there's like only two people who are doing all of the work and they don't have the bandwidth? Or is it a situation, or is it a lack of resources? Is the condo association, kind of in the red? They don't have the money to kind of do those things. And why is that? And working with them to kind of dealing with those issues. If it's a financial issue. Okay, well, what is it? What's going on? Are there a high number of delinquencies within the condo association, and why is that? And how can we address that and work through that and develop a plan to try to deal with that? Is it a situation where, we don't have the money because we're so busy dealing with, say, deferred maintenance that we haven't had the money to invest in other things? And so, does the association have to take out a loan, for an example, to kind of deal with some of those maintenance issues? And what will that look like for the community? And finding a lender that will work with them, in my office working with that lender in order to help the community to do something like that, if that's the case. If it's more of just, two people doing all of the work, what can we do to help foster the sense of community and get more people to want to be involved? I had one association, the first time they brought it up to me, I was like, oh, when I was much younger in this practice. But I think I paused because it was a senior community. And so they were like, Nicole, we want to serve beer and wine at the annual meeting. And so, but they did, and it worked. They got a lot of people to kind of come out, more than they had in the past. And then they started talking about the things that they were doing and were able to get more people involved. So it's also trying to maybe be creative in some ways that you are reaching out to the membership. Running for HOA board president in some respects is similar to me running for the House of Delegates. I have to go out and talk to my neighbors and find out what their concerns are, and having that conversation. And I think some of the reason you see apathy sometimes in the community is because you don't have someone or a group of persons going around reaching out to their neighbor and saying, hey, how are you doing? How are you enjoying living here? What is it that we can do to make your home life better here? So
let me ask you, what if you have a situation when the condo association does not conduct elections in accordance with the bylaws? What do you do then?
So, if there's a homeowner that's coming to me with that type of complaint, in addition, one, that's what elections are for. You can vote them out. But right. Two, also, you can file a complaint with the Attorney General's office. The state Attorney General does have oversight powers to some degree in certain things, elections of condo associations and homeowner associations being one of them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they will step in and kind of intervene in those particular situations.
Or how about if, the condo association is run by a group of people that are self-serving, and essentially they're taking actions, maybe they might be duly elected, but they're taking actions which are not in line with the best interest of the entire association, the entire community. What can be done in that respect?
Yeah. And again, you can file a complaint with the Attorney General's office in those situations as well.
Would you, as an attorney, be somebody who would, represent that type of person with that type of concern and helping them to file that complaint, or what are the steps that you would take a person with a complaint like that through?
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with some communities where those situations have happened. It varies from case by case, but we can definitely, help them reach out to the Consumer Protection Division of the Attorney General's office. That's where this would fall under their department. We have, helped with in terms of their elections. If they need to hold fair and balanced elections, right. We'll serve as kind of an election monitor, advising the association, and at the same time, people do need to get the votes that they need to get to elect a whole new board. Right. But we will, if they don't feel comfortable with that, we will, count the ballots, be the collector of the proxies and things like that, just to ensure that the election is done properly and fairly.
And of course, if people need to contact Attorney Nicole Williams and Delegate Nicole Williams, you can absolutely contact Abe Legal at www.abe.legal, and we can get you in touch with her and set up a consultation for you to go over these types of issues. Let me ask you, let's say, for example, if you have a delinquency and you've been confronted with the challenge of the pandemic, and you want to negotiate a payment arrangement with your condo association, and they're not, open to that. What are your options there? Are there resources that you as an attorney could help steer someone like that towards, or how would you approach that type of issue?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a situation like that, all of the courts have mediation. It's not required, but I would definitely recommend requesting that because in that, a lot of times, and it's depending on the jurisdiction, but especially like in Prince George's County, the judges like to see that you've tried to work something out, and they will sometimes encourage the other side to work something out. It's kind of been my experience here with a lot of our judges here in Prince George's County. And so the mediation is free. I think the mediators, for the most part, that I've dealt with have been pretty good in helping the parties come to some type of payment plan or resolution that will work for both sides, that's affordable for the homeowner, but yet also the association feels as if it's sufficient in terms of trying to deal with the outstanding delinquency.
And I know we're pressed against the time, and I'd like to see if we can have you back, because I just think that this time, we had a couple of hiccups in terms of the actual broadcast. But
yes, I apologize for the beginning hiccup. But
oh no, hey, it happens. It happens. What are the top goals that you have this year, both for your legislative work and responsibility, as well as your legal work? I mean, this is the beginning of the year. 2022 goals, are the top of the list.
My New Year's resolutions.
Absolutely. And let me ask you, I mean, how about fitness? We at Abe are big on making sure that people not only have access to world-class lawyers, but also world-class fitness providers. What fitness goals might you have for this year? I don't know if you've employed yoga as a part of your regimen, especially. And this might be something that your colleagues in the House of Delegates can take advantage of. We can get them all set up on an Abe yoga platform and have everybody do a yoga session. I'm sure that they would benefit from it. But I mean, what are your thoughts about 2022 all around the areas?
So from a legislative standpoint, I have a couple of bills that I'm working on, a couple of legislative priorities I'm working on. I mentioned I am on the cannabis referendum and legalization work group. And so that's something that I'm working on. I am also working on a bill that was introduced last session by one of my colleagues, Chair Vanessa Atterbury, with right to counsel in immigration proceedings, providing a right to counsel for those Marylanders who are getting caught up in our immigration system. In addition to that piece of legislation, I'm also working on a bill. We talked about COVID, and so it's an emergency bill with regards to landlord-tenant matters and requiring landlords to work with their tenants who are applying for the emergency rental assistance funds, and to ensure that they are not engaging in any type of eviction proceedings while that tenant is, trying to get the assistance of those funds and things like that. Another piece of legislation that I'm also working on this upcoming legislative session has to do with, I got a couple different things.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. Tell us about, that you got about 3 or 4 legislative goals. How about your law practice goals? What are some of the
law practice goals? Really, our law practice goals is really just kind of helping our clients develop a really, with this COVID environment, a lot of our clients had to move to a virtual space in terms of their meetings, their elections, and things like that. There was legislation that was passed last session to allow that to happen a lot easier, and to clarify how that process should take place, and just really helping our clients to be able to navigate through that and figure out a way to, hold those elections in an electronic space, which is very new for them. That's one of my goals, to help them streamline that process. Also really helping them navigate this kind of fickle fiscal climate that we're in. We thought we were coming out of COVID, and then bam, we have another surge that is really affecting people's finances. And inflation, I think they said, was at 7% at the end of 2021. And so just really helping our clients navigate and weather through the fiscal challenges that they might be seeing coming down the pipe because of this. And also the supply chain shortages is affecting our clients in terms of maintenance and repairs, and being able to do those things. I have a client right now that needs to make a couple of repairs within several of their condominium buildings, and it's being delayed because of the supply chain shortages that they're receiving. They're not able to get the cabinets in that they need to replace in this woman's unit in a timely manner, and things like that. So those are some of the things from a business, from my legal practice standpoint, want to see in my fitness goals. So the beginning of COVID, this thing keeps moving. The beginning of the pandemic, we were all stuck in our house. And so initially, so one of the things I did, I bought a bike May of 2020. And so I've been
indoor bike or outdoor bike?
Outdoor bike.
Okay.
And so I've been doing a lot more cycling. Right. And then I actually just recently purchased an indoor bike, a stationary bike, to get me through the winter months. Good. And so I am looking forward to breaking in my new stationary bike that I just recently purchased, and continuing. It's been really great. I lost like 40 pounds during the pandemic.
Doing cycling, huh?
Just through cycling.
Would you be open to doing cycling classes, like a
oh gosh, I'm not a cycling teacher. I don't know about that.
No, not teaching. I'm saying, is attending cycling classes, is that something?
Yeah.
We don't offer cycling right now, but I'm just trying to get some potential customer. If we did offer cycling, would that be something that might be of interest to you?
Yeah, it would be. And so that's been my kind of little new hobby in terms of helping me achieve my fitness goals, as well as, just physical and mental health is so extremely important. And one of the things I realize is that if I'm not my best self, then I cannot help others and be, my best self to them. And so I have to also make sure I'm taking care of me so I can help take care of others. And so
how many days per week do you have as your goal to work out every day? I mean,
3 to 4 days a week.
3 to 4 days. Okay, good. Good. That's a very solid goal. Well, Nicole, this has been an amazing conversation. I'm sorry that it went by so fast and we had some hiccups, but I do have your commitment, right, to have you back on?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Excellent. And we do know you are prolific. You have a blue check next to your name on Instagram. So folks will make sure that her Instagram account is listed. And of course, the link to schedule an appointment is in the comments. Again, feel free to like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already done so, so you can get updates on our next conversations with attorney Nicole Williams. And also don't hesitate to put your comments even after the podcast, and we can also keep on those and make sure that she gets those and gets back to you accordingly. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much for your time. I know it's scarce during the midst of the session, so I'm glad we were able to get you. And we look forward to doing some great work with you in the upcoming days and weeks ahead. All right.
All right. Sounds great.
You be safe out there too.
Thanks. You too.
Take care.
Right,
ciao.
Bye.
Well, this has been an amazing conversation with the state delegate and the attorney, condo real estate lawyer, Nicole Williams. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to again reach us at abe.legal. Or give us a buzz on our contact number, and we'll make sure that that's in the comment bar. But this is the type of conversation that you can expect from Abe And this is the type of platform that we built just for you. So without any further ado, we will bid you good night.